All right. Hello, hello. Chapter 180 of Chainsaw Man just dropped today. And there is a little bit to talk about. So let's get started with that. I am using a new filter on my mic, so please let me know if I sound too loud, too quiet, or just sound even worse than I usually do. But anyways, while Yoru is frozen, the aging devil bangs, he finger guns her back, and this sends Yoru and Denji into the aging devil's domain, the aging devil's world, which is the title of today's chapter, Aging's World. So, as that's happening, Asa gets switched back, and then she is having that dream again where she's running through an alley and stomping on the chickens. Except this time, there's no chickens to be stomped on. Rather, she's just stomping like holes into the concrete. She's stomping on broken concrete. So, this could be a symbolism for how that the chickens are already dead. And this time she is causing like massive destruction with the broken concrete across the city. But anyways, Asa and Yoru arrives in a forest, and on the ground is Denji. And as soon as Asa sees Denji, Yoru switches back and starts shooting him with her finger gun, but nothing's coming out. And she tries a couple more times, but as soon as she realizes that she can't do that, she switches back to Asa. So this is a little uncharacteristically quiet for her, because usually she will say stuff other than bang. So I think in this case, we're gonna see a lot more Asa than we are of Yoru in control. But as soon as Asa switches back, we are greeted by a guy in his underwear. He welcomes her to the aging devil's world and kind of give her a brief rundown on what it is. A brief explanation. So this guy used to be a devil hunter. He was pretty good, apparently. But one day, as he is passing by a mirror, he noticed that his skin is aging, his face is looking older. And he says aloud that he wishes to make a contract with an aging devil, just a passing by remark. However, you need to be careful what you say around a world with devils in it because that contract became a reality. So this guy's been trapped in the Mere Devil's domain for 82 years, and he is apparently the youngest one in the world, the Aging Devil's world. So that would also mean that this is the first time in 82 years where he's met a new person. Da, da, da. So let's do a brief rundown on how the Aging Devil's world could work. Because the way I see it, there's three possibilities for how time works in this part, this area. So the first is that time passes at the same rate as the real world, as the outside world. But if that's the case, that would mean that by the time Denji and Asa gets out, the Death Devil will probably have ended the world already. Because the Death Devil is supposed to come in July. And currently it's around like January or February, depending on how many weeks have passed. I think around, yeah, late January is a good guess. And it could also mean that the devil hunting system that's been going on has been relatively the same since 82 years ago. Personally, I think that's not that likely of a scenario. Scenario B is that time doesn't exist on the outside, where it's like the Eternity Devil, where like if you're stuck inside, you're in a pocket dimension, and time just completely freezes on the outside. So like if you're trapped in there at like 1 o'clock, you get out, it's still going to be 1 o'clock. And the only difference is that in the Eternity Devil's realm, you can starve, you can thirst to death, you can physically be attacked to death. Whereas in the Aging Devil's realm, apparently you can't get hungry, you can be thirsty, and you can't physically harm anyone. Or at least yourself. And scenario C, I think that's maybe a more likely scenario than A, at least, is that time does pass on the outside, but just not as fast. So, like, it's like the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball, where you were inside for maybe like a year, and outside only 1 day passes. So in that case, Denji and Asa could be in there for 100 years, and when they get out, it could be like June or July. In that case, we might be seeing a small time skip so that Denji and Asa gets out right on time to fight the Death Devil. But anyways, the underwear man, he also mentions that there are other humans in the Aging Devil's realm, but they're crazier than he is. Their minds are gone. So that could explain how the Aging Devil got people to, be his seat, be the legs of his throne a couple chapters ago. And in this case, they've probably been there for decades, centuries, even more. Horrible existence. And this guy also mentions that there is someone who escaped a long time ago, supposedly. A legend of a single person. And that person is probably Yoshida. Because on Volume 17's inside cover, Yoshida was depicted standing in the woods, looking very depressed and very sad. To the point where readers were saying that this imagery looks like he was contemplating, ending his life. And when Yoshida was talking to Kishibe, he dropped this line where even a great devil hunter can't be aging. So, hint hint, wink wink, kind of high level foreshadowing here. Also, Yoshida just is a lot stronger and a lot more knowledgeable than a typical high schooler should be. And he was specifically requested by Makima to protect Denji, which is really weird, because why would she, request a high schooler back then? That really didn't add up back in the day. Yoshida also just doesn't appear to be physically different from part 1 to part 2. So granted, like, the time skip between part 1 and part 2 was like not even a year. And that could also just be like art choices, whereas Denji looks different. He looks more mature, more grown, but he does have he is a hybrid, so we don't really know how aging works for him either. So it could just be a art style change from Fujimoto. But Yoshida being the supposed escapee can also explain how the public safety had a good relationship with the Aging Devil. It's because Yoshida brokered that relationship. Because Fumiko seems to be mostly doing what Yoshida is like, she's probably following Yoshida's plan for the most part. So this relationship between public safety and the aging devil probably came from the way of Yoshida. Ba-ba-ba. But anyways, after like 3 minutes of meeting a new person, this guy decided that it's his designated time to start going crazy, to start losing it. And honestly, relatable. But he starts hugging a tree. He calls Asa an illusion and refers to her as Ritsuko, not Go, Ritsuko. So that's probably the person that he usually hallucinates about. And he starts just embracing the tree and screaming into the air. And, this little bump on the bark of the tree does look like a boobie, so I can see the resemblance to a woman here. And the chapter ends with Asa kind of looking on in shock. So that's the end of the chapter. Yeah, some predictions for the future. So I think Denji and Asa are going to be in the Aging Devil's world for a while. Because Fujimoto loves having characters suffering for decades and decades in his other works. Yeah, so I think they're gonna be in there for 6 chapters minimum. And I think they're going to bang. They're gonna get it on. Not necessarily because they develop feelings for each other in there, but because there's just nothing else to do. Like, if you put me and this elderly 80-year-old grandpa at the park in the room together for like 80 years, we'll probably bang, like, somehow. Even though, like, I'm not attracted to him and he's not attracted to me. But that's probably what's gonna happen, just by the nature of boredom. I think Fujimoto's gonna go like big balls with it, and he's gonna draw them doing that for like 3 chapters. And I think when they come back, there's going to be a minor time skip. Not necessarily so much that like they fight, not to like July, not when the Death Devil comes, but I think like maybe a month or 2, or maybe even just like a handful of weeks. Because when they were last in the human world, they caused the big mess. So I think if they just respond to right where they left off, it's a little awkward in terms of story progression. But yeah, that's about it for me. Overall, pretty short chapter, but there are some interesting implications to talk about. And that's pretty much it for now. Let me see. Some comments for this week. Mike sounds smoother. Oh, neat. I'm glad. Let's see. This feels like Inception. People don't age, but their subconscious is aging. It could explain why Pochita wasn't teleported there. Yeah, that does. I don't know if Pochita like intentionally just disappeared and gave Denji his body back, because now that like the danger is gone supposedly, or is it like Asa and Yoru where they were knocked out and then they just reverted back to their base form? I don't really think we're gonna get too much elaboration on that, but it's interesting to think about. Reminds me when Yoru talked to Asa for the first time. Time stays still, but in their brain, time was moving as they were talking. Yes. I think that was the case for just about every like human devil interaction inside when they're like fusing, like Denji and Pochita and Denji and Power. And I think that's the only examples that we have so far. Do I think this is why Kishibe is so strong? He trained in the hyperbolic time chamber. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people say that they think the supposed escapee is Kishibe. I think it's very likely to be Yoshida. I don't think there's a chance that it's Kishibe at all, because first of all, he's old, right? We see him like actively age throughout the series, or throughout the what do you call it? The volume extras. We see him like when he was like 30, when he was like 40 with Quan Chi. So we see him throughout the decades. We see him physically age. And I don't think being in the aging devil's realm necessarily like contributed to him being strong. In fact, I think the whole idea of him being strong is a little overstated in that we don't really see him do that well in fights so far. Like he fought Quan Chi a little bit. That's about it. He beat Quan Chi's two feints off screen, which is pretty cool, but at the same time, it's not like overwhelmingly impressive. Whereas his other appearances, he's just kind of standing there. He survived more so due to luck than like his own skill. But yeah, that's more so my thoughts on people thinking this is Kishibe. But but yeah, I guess that's about it for now. There is going to be a chapter next week, so I'll come back around then.